You know, there's something deeply powerful about silence. It's often in the quiet moments that we feel the weight of our struggles the most. When the noise of the world fades away and we're left alone with our thoughts, our fears, and sometimes our doubts. It's in those moments that many people wonder if God is even there, if He's listening, if He cares, if He's really walking alongside them. But here's the truth I want you to hear today. God's presence is often found in the silent. He doesn't always announce Himself with thunder or fireworks. Sometimes He chooses to walk silently, almost invisibly, right there with you. When you think about it, God's silence is not absence. It's a kind of presence that goes deeper than words or signs. It's like the quiet in a room before something important happens, the calm before the breakthrough. And I want you to understand that God's silence isn't about ignoring you or leaving you alone. It's about Him being so close that you can't see or hear Him, but He is there. He's walking silently with those who sincerely seek Him, with those whose hearts are honest and open. It's the sincerity of your spirit that draws His quiet presence near. Many times we expect God to show up in ways that are loud and obvious, like a dramatic rescue or an instant answer. But God's ways are often different from our expectations. He moves in ways we can't always detect with our physical senses. Think about how in nature the wind is invisible, but you see its effects in the rustling leaves or the swaying branches. God's presence is similar. He may be silent, but His presence moves in your life in ways you might not immediately recognize. Maybe it's the strength you find to keep going, the peace that settles in your heart during a storm, or the gentle nudging to keep faith when you want to give up. These are the footprints of God walking silently with you. The idea that God walks silently with the sincere is so important because it invites us to cultivate sincerity in our own hearts. It means that God's closeness depends not on the noise we make or the outward shows of faith, but on the genuineness of our relationship with Him. When you come before God with honesty, bringing your real struggles, your doubts, your hopes, He draws near. It's not about perfection, it's about being real. And when you're real, God meets you there, often quietly, but powerfully. I want you to think about the times in your life when you felt most alone. Maybe it was during a hard season, a time of loss, or a moment when you thought no one could understand what you were going through. Those are the times when God's silent presence is often closest. He's not absent. He's not distant. He's right there in the quiet, holding your hand when no one else can, walking with you step by step. Even if you don't feel Him, even if you don't hear Him, He is there. That is a promise you can hold on to. And it's important to remember that silence isn't just about waiting. It's about being present. It's about recognizing that sometimes the greatest comfort isn't in hearing an answer right away, but in knowing someone is right there beside you. God's silent presence offers that comfort. It reminds you that you are not alone in your pain, your fear, or your uncertainty. He walks with the sincere, those who keep coming, keep trusting, and keep believing, even when it feels like the silence is endless. So if you're in a place of silence right now, if you're wondering where God is, let me encourage you to listen differently. Don't just wait for a voice or a sign. Open your heart to the quiet assurance that God is walking silently with you. You might not hear footsteps or see a light shining, but feel the peace that comes when you trust that His presence is there. Let that peace be your anchor when the world feels overwhelming. In that silence, you're invited to surrender, not just your worries, but your need to control the timing and the way God shows up. Sometimes God's silence is teaching us to trust Him more deeply, to grow in our faith, and to learn that His presence isn't always loud because it's so intimate and personal. It's a presence that stays close even when it's quiet, because God is always with the sincere, always walking, always faithful, always near. And let me tell you something vital. Sincerity isn't just a nice quality to have. It's the very pathway that opens the door to divine companionship. It's not about how loudly you pray, how perfect your words sound, or how many religious activities you check off on a list. No, it's about what's going on inside your heart, your honesty, your humility, your willingness to come before God as you truly are. Because God isn't impressed by showmanship or by pretending. He's drawn to sincerity, to those who approach Him with genuine hearts. When we talk about sincerity, we're talking about a heart stripped of pretense. It's that place where you're not hiding behind masks or trying to convince yourself or others that everything is fine when it's not. Sincerity means coming before God with all your mess, all your doubts, your fears, and your failures. It's about being real, even when it's uncomfortable or scary. And I want you to know something deeply encouraging. When you do that, God draws near. He walks silently with those who are sincere, because sincerity invites His presence in a way nothing else can. I think about how easy it is for us to get caught up in appearances, putting on a brave face, saying the right things, acting like everything's okay. But God sees through that. He knows what's really in your heart. He's not looking for perfection. He's looking for honesty. The Bible tells us that God is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. That's not about putting on a show. It's about coming before Him with a heart that's open and vulnerable. Sincerity is the foundation for a true relationship with God, because relationships are built on truth. If you were going to build a friendship with someone, you wouldn't start by pretending to be someone you're not. You'd start by being honest about who you are. It's the same with God. When your heart is sincere, when you approach Him without masks or pretenses, you open the door to a deeper connection. You create space for God to move, to speak, to walk silently beside you. Think about the story of the tax collector in the temple who stood apart, not even daring to lift his eyes to heaven. He was sincere in his repentance, acknowledging his faults openly. Jesus said he went home justified because of his sincerity, not because of what he did outwardly, but because of the honest posture of his heart. That's powerful. It tells us that sincerity is what God honors. It's what invites Him to walk silently with us through every trial and triumph. And here's something else. Sincerity also means being sincere with yourself. Sometimes we hide from our own truths because they're painful or uncomfortable. But if you want to experience God's companionship in the deepest way, you've got to be willing to face your own heart honestly. Admit where you're struggling. Recognize your weaknesses. Celebrate your hopes. God can handle it all, and He welcomes your honesty with open arms. There's a freedom and sincerity that can't be matched. When you're sincere, you're no longer trying to prove yourself or earn favor. You're simply being yourself before God, and that's enough. It's in that place of authenticity that God walks silently beside you, not because you have it all together, but because you have a heart that's real and willing. I want to encourage you to examine your own heart right now. Are you coming before God with sincerity, or is there a part of you that's hiding, pretending, or holding back? God isn't waiting for you to be perfect. He's waiting for you to be real. And when you step into that reality, you open the door to a companionship that is deeper than words, stronger than circumstances, and more constant than the shifting seasons of life. Sincerity invites God's presence in a way that no ritual, no religious activity, no outward appearance ever can. It's the key that unlocks the door to walking with God silently, intimately, and faithfully. It's what turns a lonely journey into a shared walk with the divine, because when your heart is sincere, God is not far off. He's right there with you every step of the way. So if you're searching for companionship in your faith, if you're longing to feel God near, start by being sincere. Strip away the masks, lay down the pretenses, come as you are with all your honesty, your struggles, your hopes. And know this, when you do, God will walk silently with you. He will not leave you alone. Loneliness is something we all face at some point. It's a feeling that creeps in quietly or sometimes hits us like a wave. It can be in the middle of a crowd or in the silence of our own rooms. And when loneliness settles in, it feels heavy, like a weight pressing down on your soul. But here's the truth you need to hold on to. No matter how deep that loneliness feels, you are never truly alone. There is a presence that stands with you, walks with you, and carries you through those moments. Faith reveals that presence. Faith isn't just about believing in something distant or abstract. Faith is the bridge that connects us to God's companionship when loneliness threatens to consume us. When life circumstances isolate you, when friends let you down, or when you feel like the world has turned its back, faith is the quiet voice reminding you that God is near. He doesn't always come with dramatic signs or loud answers, but He is there in the silent spaces, walking beside you, holding your heart. One of the hardest parts about loneliness is the way it convinces you that no one understands, that you're invisible or forgotten. But faith pushes back against that lie. It reminds you that God knows you intimately, sees every tear, and hears every unspoken prayer. You're never a number or a face in the crowd to Him. You are known and cherished beyond measure. And that knowledge, that assurance is powerful. It doesn't erase the loneliness overnight, but it gives you something to hold on to when the nights are long and the silence is loud. Faith also changes the way you experience loneliness. It turns it from a place of despair into a place of encounter. Because when you lean into your faith, loneliness becomes an invitation to deepen your relationship with God. It's in those quiet moments when you feel most alone that you can open your heart fully and allow God's presence to fill the emptiness. You might not hear a voice or see a vision, but you can feel a peace that surpasses understanding. That peace is God walking silently with you, proving that even in your solitude, you are deeply connected. I want you to imagine what it means to have faith as your companion in loneliness. When you feel isolated, faith tells you that there is a divine presence who understands your pain, who knows your story, and who will never leave you. It's faith that gives you the courage to keep moving forward when the weight of loneliness tries to stop you. It's faith that whispers you are not alone when the world feels cold and distant. There's also something profoundly comforting in knowing that the God who walks silently with the sincere has experienced loneliness Himself. He understands what it means to be misunderstood, to feel abandoned, and to carry the weight of the world on His shoulders. That empathy means you're not just reaching out into the void. You're reaching into the heart of one who truly understands and cares. This isn't a distant deity, but a loving companion who walks with you through every season. Faith doesn't promise a life free from loneliness, but it offers something greater. A companionship that transforms loneliness into an encounter with God's love. And that companionship strengthens you in ways nothing else can. It teaches you resilience, patience, and trust. It helps you see that even when you can't change your circumstances immediately, you can change the way you relate to them through faith. Sometimes overcoming loneliness through faith means accepting that God's timing and ways are different from ours. It means trusting Him to walk silently beside you, even when you don't feel His presence. It means holding onto the promise that He is there, faithful and true, even in the darkest valleys. And it means knowing that your faith will carry you through until the loneliness fades and you step into a new season of connection and joy. I want you to remember that loneliness is not a sign of failure or abandonment. It's a part of the human experience, yes, but it's also an opportunity to deepen your faith and discover the silent companionship of God. When you feel alone, lean into your faith. Let it be the anchor that holds you steady and the light that guides you through the night. One of the most challenging things about faith is learning to trust God's timing and methods, especially when life doesn't unfold the way we expect. We live in a world that demands immediacy, instant answers, quick fixes, and fast results. But God operates on a different timetable. His ways are often quiet, patient, and sometimes mysterious. And here's the hard truth. Trusting God's timing means learning to be comfortable with waiting, with uncertainty, and with silence. It's easy to want God to show up on our schedule, to answer our prayers exactly when we ask and in the way we imagine. But the reality is, God walks silently with the sincere, often working behind the scenes where we can't see. His methods may not be flashy or dramatic. Sometimes they look like small, subtle shifts in our hearts or gradual changes in our circumstances. It's like watching a seed grow. You don't see the roots pushing down or the sprouts slowly breaking through the soil. All you see is the waiting. But that waiting is part of God's perfect design. Trusting God's timing means accepting that His perspective is bigger than ours. What we see is limited by our own experiences and desires, but God sees the whole picture, past, present, and future. He knows what's best for us, even when we don't. And that kind of trust requires surrender. It means letting go of the need to control every outcome and allowing God to lead, even when the path isn't clear. I want you to think about the stories in the Bible where God's timing was completely different from what people expected. Abraham and Sarah waited decades for the promise of a child. Joseph endured years of hardship before becoming a leader in Egypt. David waited in the wilderness before becoming king. Each of these stories reminds us that God's timing is purposeful. The waiting isn't wasted time, it's preparation time. It's the season where God is shaping us, teaching us, and positioning us for what's ahead. Sometimes trusting God's methods means embracing the silence. When you don't hear an answer or see a sign, it can feel like God is distant or silent, but that silence is often God walking silently with you, shaping your character, building your faith, and preparing you for the next step. It's in those quiet moments that God is doing some of His most important work, and if you rush ahead or try to force things, you might miss the blessing that comes from trusting Him completely. Trusting God's timing also means understanding that delay is not denial. When God doesn't answer your prayer immediately, it doesn't mean He has forgotten you or that He doesn't care. It means He's working in ways you can't see yet. His methods might include building your patience, growing your faith, or protecting you from something you don't realize. Trusting that is a form of faith itself. A belief that God's plan is perfect even when it feels slow or unclear. There's a freedom that comes with trusting God's timing and methods. You don't have to carry the burden of figuring everything out or controlling every detail. You can rest in the knowledge that God is with you, walking silently beside you, and that He has a plan for your life that is good and perfect. When you embrace that, waiting becomes less about frustration and more about anticipation. It becomes a season of preparation, growth, and quiet confidence. I want to encourage you to look at your own life and see where you might be struggling to trust God's timing. Maybe you're waiting for a breakthrough, a healing, a relationship, or a direction. Maybe you feel like the silence is too long or the waiting too hard. But I want you to hear this today. God is not late. He is not absent. He is walking silently with you, working all things together for your good, even when you don't see it yet. Your job is to stay sincere, stay faithful, and keep your heart open. Keep trusting that God's timing is perfect and His methods are wise. Let go of the need to rush and rest in His presence. Because when you do, you'll find a peace that surpasses understanding, a peace that anchors your soul through every season. There's something profoundly powerful about quiet devotion and prayer. In a world that's constantly clamoring for our attention, where noise and distraction are everywhere, choosing to step into a place of silence with God is an act of faith and surrender. It's in those quiet moments, away from the chaos, that we open the door for God to walk silently with us. Prayer and devotion aren't just rituals or duties to check off. They're the sacred spaces where our hearts meet God's presence. When you think about prayer, it's easy to imagine it as a list of requests or a moment to speak out loud. But quiet devotion goes beyond words. It's about creating a stillness inside, a space where God can speak in ways beyond language. It's that silence where you're not trying to fix everything or explain your life. You're simply being present with God. That's where the real connection happens. God walks silently with the sincere, and sincere hearts find Him in the quiet devotion of prayer. I want you to imagine how often God might be trying to reach you in those moments when you slow down, when you step away from the noise, and when you sit quietly before Him. In the stillness, He whispers peace into your restless heart. He offers guidance when your mind is overwhelmed. He brings healing when your spirit feels broken. This is the power of quiet devotion, the way it invites God to move gently and deeply within you. There's a beautiful humility in quiet prayer. It's not about impressing anyone or proving how spiritual you are. It's about honestly laying your soul bare before God, trusting that He hears the unspoken cries and understands your deepest needs. Sometimes the most powerful prayers are the ones where we simply sit in silence, letting God's presence fill the space. This kind of devotion builds a relationship, not one based on demands or expectations, but on trust and intimacy. When you develop a habit of quiet devotion, you start to notice God's silent footsteps more clearly. You become more aware of His presence even in the ordinary moments of life. You start to recognize the subtle ways He guides you, the gentle nudges that steer your decisions, and the quiet comfort that steadies your soul. Prayer becomes less about asking and more about listening. It becomes a two-way conversation where God walks silently beside you, not distant or detached, but intimately involved in every part of your life. Quiet devotion also helps us cultivate patience and perseverance. It's easy to grow restless when prayers aren't answered quickly or when life's challenges linger. But sitting in quiet before God teaches us to wait, to trust, and to believe that He is working even when we can't see it. It's in those moments of quiet faith that God is often doing His most important work, shaping our character, deepening our trust, and preparing us for what's ahead. Another powerful aspect of quiet prayer is its ability to transform our hearts. When we take the time to be still and devote ourselves to God, we allow Him to soften our fears, heal our wounds, and renew our hope. It's a place where anxiety gives way to peace, confusion turns into clarity, and loneliness is met with companionship. This transformation happens slowly but surely as God's silent presence changes us from the inside out. I want you to think about the times in your life when you felt most connected to God. Chances are those moments weren't the loudest or most dramatic. They were the quiet times when you stopped, bowed your head, and opened your heart. That's where God meets us. Not in the noise of the crowd, but in the silence of sincere devotion. So if you're feeling distant or disconnected, I encourage you to create space for quiet devotion and prayer in your life. Turn off the distractions, find a place of stillness, and just be with God. You don't have to have the perfect words or a perfectly organized prayer. Just bring your sincere heart. That's enough. God walks silently with those who seek Him sincerely, and He will meet you there. Your quiet devotion and prayer are powerful because they open the door for God's silent presence to fill your life. When you make space for that stillness, you invite a companionship that is steady, faithful, and deeply intimate.